Welcome to the podcast summary of Heinrich Himmler. Today's story is really about how Heinrich Himmler built power. He took the SS from a small bodyguard unit and turned it into a sprawling empire of police, camps, intelligence, soldiers, and ideology. And that matters because the same system that made him powerful also made mass murder administratively possible. By the end, the whole thing curdled into military incompetence, panic, and a last-minute betrayal of the regime he'd spent years serving. When Himmler took over the SS in 1929, it had roughly 290 men. By 1930, it was around 3,000, and by 1933, about 52,000. Those numbers matter, but the bigger story is what he actually built. He kept pulling more institutions under SS control: the Gestapo, criminal police, uniform police, intelligence services, concentration camps, and eventually the Waffen-SS. So the SS stopped being just an organization and started functioning like its own power structure, formally answerable to Hitler, but often operating beyond normal state oversight. Himmler wasn't impressive because he was some great battlefield mind. His talent was bureaucratic consolidation, ideological discipline, and finding capable subordinates, especially Reinhard Heydrich, who helped make the machine run. It's one of those grim reminders that history is not only shaped by dramatic speeches or battles. Sometimes it turns on a man who's very good at org charts. Himmler was one of the principal architects of the Holocaust. He oversaw concentration and extermination camps, the Einsatzgruppen death squads, and the administrative systems behind the murder of roughly 5.5 to 6 million Jews. One of the chilling things here is how ordinary the language could sound. At the Wannsee meeting in January 1942, extermination was presented as an administrative project, as if genocide were a logistics problem to be managed. Then by 1943, in the Posen speeches, Himmler spoke explicitly about the destruction of the Jewish people and demanded secrecy and shared complicity from Nazi leaders. There's also a revealing detail about his reaction to mass shootings. After witnessing one, he was physically shaken, but that didn't mean moral revulsion. What it showed was concern about the strain on the killers and the efficiency of the method. His answer was to seek more impersonal forms of murder, which is horrifying in a very bureaucratic way. Himmler's vision went beyond killing. It included remaking Eastern Europe through racial colonization. General Plan Osti imagined a conquered East where about 31 million existing inhabitants would be expelled, starved, enslaved, or killed, while German settlers moved in. He treated racial policy almost like livestock management crossed with census work. The goal was to make Germany more Nordic through selective breeding and by sorting populations according to supposed genetic value. That included kidnapping children from Polish and other Eastern European families if they were judged to have good blood, then raising them as Germans. And children who failed racial screening could be sent to concentration camps. It's hard to overstate how cold this was. Family life, childhood, identity, all reduced to a racial filing system backed by terror. What makes Himmler especially unsettling is that this hyper-bureaucratic world was paired with mysticism. He wanted the SS to function almost like a replacement religion. He rejected Christianity's sexual morality and its emphasis on mercy, and instead promoted Germanic mythology, ancestor worship, solstice rituals, altered marriage ceremonies, and SS-specific funerals. The Einerby went looking for pseudoscientific proof of ancient Germanic superiority, while SS symbols like the runic insignia and the Totenkopf were meant to create a sacred tradition of belonging and sacrifice. So this wasn't just administrative violence. It was administrative violence dressed up with myth, racial pseudoscience, and a fantasy of historical destiny. That mix gave atrocity a spiritual gloss, which is a very dangerous thing. It let brutality feel noble to the people carrying it out. For all his control over police and military institutions, Himmler was disastrously unqualified as a field commander. In January 1945, Hitler gave him Army Group Vistula, even though he had little military experience. His headquarters didn't even have the maps, communications, or operational capacity needed for serious command. The result was exactly what you'd fear. He failed to halt the Soviet advance. The offensive collapsed, and Hitler replaced him. It says a lot about the late Nazi state that ideological loyalty and political standing had pushed aside professional competence. By that point, the regime was running on fantasy, panic, and habit. The same desperation showed up in the Volkssturm, the militia that pulled in boys as young as 14. It was poorly armed, badly prepared, and about 175,000 of its members died in the final months of the war. Then came the final collapse. In March and April 1945, with defeat unavoidable, Himmler secretly tried to negotiate with the Western Allies through Swedish intermediaries. His hope was to surrender to Britain and the United States while continuing the war against the Soviet Union. Even at the end, the thinking was cynical and selective. Hitler saw this as total betrayal. He stripped Himmler of every office, expelled him from the Nazi Party, and ordered his arrest, despite having long treated him as the loyal Heinrich. That phrase really falls apart under pressure. Himmler's loyalty held while Hitler remained the source of power. But once survival and political calculation took over, obedience started looking optional. He tried to escape, was captured by the British, and killed himself with cyanide in custody. After all the mythology, all the uniforms, all the machinery of power, it ended in collapse and self-preservation. Himmler's story is a brutal lesson in how modern systems can be used for monstrous ends, especially when bureaucracy, ideology, and fantasy start reinforcing each other. And it's a reminder that a regime can look ruthlessly organized on the surface while rotting from the inside. Thanks for listening. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.